Our first presenter is Paul Lubinski. The title of Paul's speech is Making Pathways Work for You. This is a speech which will fulfill his level 3 elective of using presentation software in his engaging humor path. Marvel will actually provide him a written evaluation of his speech so that he will receive credit. And with that, let's welcome Paul.
Thank you, Celeste, for the warm welcome. Thank you as well, the warm welcome that getting to from everybody in attendance here. Tonight, I wanted to focus on supporting your success, which is that I know that we're all on different journeys of communication and leadership building skills. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Can I see some nods? And all right, fantastic. Which means that the ways that we can have pathways work for ourselves potentially are as different as we are, and as different as our goals are, and as different as our stages of our journeys might be. So this is about making pathways work for you. I'm going to share some ideas and resources about how you can think about that. First, I'll start with a disclaimer, which is that the views expressed in this presentation are solely those of the presenter, me, not of Toastmasters International or Toastmasters District 6. I'm going to specify that in two contexts. One is that while I am definitely not a pathways rule breaker, I possibly can do lots of rule bending. Some folks might get a little uncomfortable with that. That's okay. But again, no rule breaking. For example, if you want to try to apply your speech about your family vacation to Wisconsin Dells as a level 5 leadership project, I, as the VP of Education at the club, are saying, well, no, hold on a little bit here. Let's straighten that out. But there's lots of flexibility in the program. There might be more than you realize, and we're going to discuss some of that. I'll also mention that disclaimer in terms of the resources I share, which is that I have some that have been working for me. You may respond to that by singing, any resources you share, my resources are better. I'm sure my resources are better than yours. I'm not going to respond, no, they're not, because maybe they're not. Maybe yours are better, because maybe they work for you. I'm just going to just give some examples of what could work for me. I'm also trying to be mindful for all of you, especially if you're relatively new to pathways, that this bit of words of wisdom here could really apply here. We don't know what we don't know, which means the possibility that maybe you're so lost, so stuck, so unfamiliar. Not only do you not have the answers, you might not even have the questions. You might not even be able to come up with concrete and specific questions, which means that along the way here, I'm going to try to encourage you to formulate some questions to ask yourselves, and perhaps those turn into questions that we in the Pathways team and other leaders can support your help in answering. So let's get into a little bit more here. As we all know, Toastmasters is a self-paced program based on your schedule constraints, based on your goals in Toastmasters, based on how those, more importantly, relate to what you as an individual member want to do to support those bigger professional and personal goals. You set your own pace for that. That could be anything from, I want to go and get a Distinguished Toastmaster Award in 2.5 years, to I'm okay with just getting to level 1 in the next 5 years, or maybe I got to get to level 2 because I want to really be an international speech contestant, which means I got to finish level 2. Whatever the case may be, self-paced. It also happens to be, believe it or not, that Pathways is self-ordered. You don't have to go in exactly the order of the projects. The icebreaker, you do want to do that first, but the other level 1 projects, the level 2 projects, in the exact order that they're shown. I say that with this caveat, which is that I want to be honoring of your learning style. If your learning style is that you need to go in order, you're most comfortable going in order, you're making sure that it works best that way, please do. For me, I'm okay with going out of order. There might be some opportunities for it matching projects that are a little bit farther along and a little bit back this way to what you want to speak about or what's going on in your leadership activities, and not just Toastmasters leadership activities. That's why I say it could go out of order, but please proceed with caution. Related to that, and here's something about a resource. I'm just as guilty as anybody else of going with a non-Toastmasters based initial search on some of these resources. In other words, the almighty Google, or perhaps YouTube. And that's actually a way to find some evaluation forms if that you want to get straight to that. You could get them all on toastmasters.org, and there's an Azure EdgeNet, and I forget the exact name. Somebody's going to give it to me because they're smarter than me about this. It's somewhere in the chat about that resource for getting those evaluation forms. But you just want to make sure that when you complete that search for evaluation resource, blah, 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 project name, you get to a point where you check the source. Make sure it is from toastmasters.org or from that Azure Edge blah, blah, blah site that I mentioned. Sorry, I don't have it memorized. Or something similar to that, not just some site from somebody's personal web page and they happen to pull some resources. That makes you more confident you're going to get the real deal. It's going to make you more confident that if you prefer a fillable PDF version of that, as opposed to something that's non-fillable and you're stuck with printing and scanning and rescanning and reprinting, you get that opportunity. Just making sure you check those sources of those resources. Speaking of resources that are kind of at the bounds of toastmasters.org, but actually more district-based, here's where I'll mention my go-to. Toastmasters District 17. They're based in Western Australia. They really put things together well. They have these links and pull down and open and close menus of different project summaries for every path, every level, whether required projects or the elective projects as you get through the different levels. What they've also added are neat little fillable PDF tracker sheets for each path, regardless of whether your style is to take the projects in order or go a little bit out of order. And perhaps this is even more convenient if you're working in more than one path at once, another change in order that you're more than welcome to do, depending on what you want to accomplish in that journey. It's a neat place to do that. If you want to look for some place that is outside of Basecamp and checking your Basecamp buttons, maybe that's an opportunity. So I challenge yourself, I should say, encourage yourself to ask yourself that question. What resource might help me outside of Basecamp for helping keep track of my progress? Maybe the answer is, I don't need any of that stuff. Basecamp is fine. It might be something else, but this is one possibility. And I'll get into a little bit of an illustration of what goes on there. This is not the eye exam part of the meeting. This is just my way of saying, here's an example of what you find from those fillable tracker sheets. And they might be available in some other places around our web world, not necessarily just that District 17 site for which I showed the link. And I'd be glad to share that link when we get to that point if you are interested. But as one example, I'm showing the engaging humor path. This first slide that I'm showing, I've split this up into two slides, is I'm showing the level 1, level 2, level 3 projects. It's got the names of the projects, a very brief description, including, and this is an important inclusion as far as I'm concerned, whether the project is completed entirely with a speech or if there are activities besides a speech that go into those, which is definitely going to be the case as you get into the higher level projects. I'll explain a little bit more about that. Brian might as well. Marvel might as well. It's really neat the way it works out. So you can fill in your titles. You can fill in your dates, either the target dates that you want to give those speeches in your club meetings, or perhaps the actual dates when you did complete them. If you're looking for that convenience, if it helps your learning style to get outside of Basecamp for this tracking of your progress, this is one possibility. Moving on to the next sheet here, I'm showing level 4 and level 5. They're in the same sheet. I just split them up for the sake of these slides so you can see them a little bit better. Again, The required projects and the elective projects are shown here, including just a little quick one-sentence statement about what's involved besides the speeches. You're getting into more leadership activities, formal presentation activities, maybe even preparation for professional speaking kinds of activities, which means that the speech is just part of that project. From project to project, depending on what's involved and what you want to accomplish, perhaps you're giving a speech near the start of the activity to set your vision and set your plan. Or perhaps you're giving a speech at the end of the activity just to reflect on how well it went, especially your interactions with the people that you're leading, if it was a leadership kind of project. Those are all those kinds of possibilities. Now, you might have noticed here that it's the engaging humor path. This is available from that resource for all 11 paths. Why did I pick on the engaging humor path? Maybe to get you thinking a little bit about that path, which is something that I'll point out, maybe a little bit of preview or maybe even warning, depending on if you have not started that path yet, but you're thinking about it, which is of those projects that you complete in the engaging humor path, they have lots of overlap with the other paths. As a result, when you finish them, which includes, just like every other path, probably about 15 speeches, there really are only about 3 or 4 projects where it's close to what you'd consider mandatory to even try to be funny. The engaging humor path, you may consider that a plus, that you don't have to be funny all the time when you're doing the engaging humor path. You may consider it a minus. It says, that's why I got into the path, because I really want to get the funny bone exercised. It's just, you have to make it work for you. Again, this is about making pathways successful for you, which is that even though you don't have to be funny in every one of those projects, let's endeavor to work on those speeches so that even if it's the kind of project where you don't have to be funny, such as maybe a question and answer session or high performance leadership. Wow. Maybe your speech about that is something you can construct to be as funny as possible. I welcome some follow-up about that after all. TI has been taking all sorts of feedback about how can you make the humorous path more humorous. And I know that a humorous path is possibly even one of the top 2 choices if the state that you have in your journey is leadership schmeeder schmip. I just want to be a better speaker. Your top 2 are probably going to be presentation mastery and engaging humor. Maybe you knew that already. Maybe you didn't, but I thought I'd bring it up just in case you didn't. Where also there's some other resources besides what you find from Toastmasters.org. Again, I mentioned District 17 as a go-to, but other districts have also done very well at compiling those resources and getting them to the point where they can make sense for all of you. District 4, District 25, District 101 are among the examples. Here in District 6, we put together lots of resources that you can find on our site, d6tm.org. Again, they might work better for you than what I just mentioned. It's just, you figure it out for yourself and you go from there. And we District 6 leaders are here to help. So think about what other resources might work for you, specifically for you. As we get into the higher level projects, again, as I mentioned, it's not necessarily now just about speeches. Just give you that heads up, and I'm going to get into a little bit more about that with some examples. I'm not going to just shout at you all these possible examples, but it involves many leadership activities, or it involves the kinds of resources that are involved in larger group settings or wider audiences. And this is your opportunity to practice becoming better with those resources that are using as a leader or as somebody who's trying to project to a wider audience, which in some cases, like for example, podcast or social media presence, is theoretically the whole wide world. But that's what's involved. Think about not just what you're doing inside Toastmasters, but also outside Toastmasters. Ask yourself those questions and how we as district leaders and your fellow members, including your club officers, your VP of education, your mentor, could help you answer those questions. That becomes especially important if you are having the ambitions of becoming a Pathways Distinguished Toastmaster. I'm just listing all the requirements here, not just to get into them much, but just as a way to segue into some further discussion along the way here. These are in addition to your completion of 2 complete paths. That said, what you're doing in these additional activities that I'm listing here, and there's plenty of them to do, your journey of completing those activities, especially the leadership activities like a club officer, like a district officer, like leading a speech craft, and your DTM project, which is different from a high performance leadership project. Not going to get into it here, but I'm welcome to answer questions about it. For any of those, along the way, you're learning, you're growing, you're planning, you're implementing, you're interacting with people. That means you have that opportunity to speak to your audience about that. Speak to your club, which means that some speech projects in those higher levels are what you complete along the way. The way to illustrate that is, you engineers get this, and those of you who might remember this from a high school science class, or you might scare you back into some bad memories about it, any way is okay with that, is that all these activities, the path projects and the additional leadership activities on your way to becoming a better leader, which is the bottom line of why you'd want to seek to be a distinguished Toastmaster. You don't have to do them all necessarily in series. There are plenty of opportunities to do them in parallel. So I'm going to give you some examples from my personal experience. I was a co-coordinator of a speech craft. I used the Inspire Your Audience project from level 3 for one of the educational presentations to be given to the speech crafters. I organized a speech contest. So in the Leading Your Team project, I used that speech as a recap of what was involved in leading that contest. I discussed with my members the club success plan, and I knew they were not very familiar with how all that works, which meant I made it a very long presentation, followed by lots of questions and answered, which meant that level 4 project on Q&A was quite handy for that. Outside of Toastmasters, I have been leading the Twin Cities Illini Club, the local University of Illinois alumni. Now, for my overall experience in that role, I did the level 5 Leading in Your Volunteer Organization project. And for our basketball outings where we went, and sorry, Gopher fans, this past year, both the men's team and women's team lost to the Illini in back-to-back days. That was a great project for managing successful events, another level 5 project. I'll give another example from a fellow member from what they did in their workplace. Setting up, implementing a lessons learned database in their workplace was how they fulfilled their high performance leadership project. They had to organize, they had to have a team, they had to have plans and check-in steps along the way. Perfect way to implement that kind of project. So whatever you're doing, whatever is important to you, whatever you're passionate about, whether it's in Toastmasters, whether it's in your work, your volunteer endeavors, whatever's the importance there, you have the opportunity to build those skills by leveraging these pathways projects, especially the higher levels. So I encourage you to ask questions about how you might want to do that, because you get the opportunity then to work in parallel of speaking about your passions and about what you've learned along the way. You can speak about what you're planning to do. You can speak about how it all went, or you could speak about both. Ask yourself, where can I find some of those pathways projects where I can leverage this opportunity? And ask yourself how leaders such as yours truly can help your success in completion of those projects, especially as how they support your overall success in life. Very important along the way. Make sure you celebrate, make sure that you feel proud about your achievements. I'm confident that your fellow members will feel the same way. So reach out to your mentors, your club VP of education, this team, any district leaders for the guidance on what you plan to do. I also should mention is that I hope that you get to the point in Pathways that you can use this in guiding your fellow members as well. So what you do for yourself is one matter, and then another matter is how you're going to support others, especially your guests, especially new members, which means you might want to ask yourself, how can I learn more about Pathways to the point where I can guide others as well? I really appreciate all your time today. And I know that I'm going to look forward to Brian's presentation, which is going to get into a lot more of those specifics of our program. I also look forward to your questions, not only what's going to come at the very end of this hour, but any follow-up after this, immediately after the meeting or long after that. Back to you, Celeste.
Our next speaker is Brian Hinton. Brian will be giving, as was mentioned, a very different presentation about Pathways. His presentation is entitled Pathways Base Camp Fundamentals. This is a level 3 elective using presentation software project in his 8th path of leadership development. And again, he will be receiving some Pathways credit as Marva will be providing a written evaluation of his speech. Let us welcome Brian Hinton.
Thank you, Celeste. Welcome, everyone. Let me share my screen. And as I do that, I want to basically ditto Paul's disclaimer. This presentation is my views and opinions based on what I have learned. And there's actually more than one way to do what I'm going to show you tonight. But I have the presentation outlined. We'll get into that in just a minute. Have you found the user interface to Basecamp to be just a little bit confusing, maybe? Maybe is Basecamp Manager a little unfamiliar? How do you use Basecamp and Basecamp Manager? How do you access them? Maybe you're new to Toastmasters and you haven't really seen this user interface that I'm going to be talking about. But let me just mention, once that you're comfortable with the interface, it's relatively simple to navigate Basecamp and Basecamp Manager. I'm here today to show you some fundamentals, and we'll talk about that. For our agenda, there it is, I want to show you how to select a path, a little bit of some key Basecamp navigation fundamentals, as well as Basecamp Manager fundamentals. Then I'm going to put up a couple of resources and then a very, very brief conclusion. And I do intend on attacking these slides very rapidly. So I hope that you will put your questions down and write them in the QA for the session that follows. So first, how do you select a path? I actually had to review that because I recently selected this new path that I'm working on. Well, first, of course, yeah, you have to log on to Toastmasters International. And basically when you log on, you will be taken to your My Home page. If you land somewhere differently or you navigate around in Toastmasters.org, you can hover over your name and click on My Home, and that will take you to My Home, or your home, and in this case. And then scroll down a little ways, And you'll see, what does that say? Learning Hub. My readers are not on my eyes. So you'll select the Learning Hub, and that will take you to Learning Hub, where you can actually click on choose a path. I hope that everyone is seeing these slides. That takes you to a window where you can select your language. Now, I've always thought it would be kind of fun to learn a new language, but maybe I'm not going to do that in the Pathways environment. I'll probably do that offline. So I'll select English, and that will take you to the next phase where you can actually, you have to still select digital resources. It's the only option available. And then if you're relatively new to the Basecamp, or this is your first path, for example, you can take an assessment, answer a bunch of questions, and Toastmasters International will recommend 3 different paths for you. You can either select one of them, or you can select others. Now, when I very first did this, I remember I took that assessment the very, very first time, and I said, I don't want to take any of those paths, and so I selected another one. That's just me. Or your other option, of course, is to view all the paths. Select whichever option you're interested in and continue. I'm showing the all path option, and just select the path and continue. Simple as that, right? Okay, you've got your path. It will show up. It's digital. It shows up in your curriculum. So how do you access it? Oh my goodness, right? You've spent all that time selecting a path. How do you access it? Well, let me show you. Of course, log into toastmasters.org. Again, my home, scroll down. This time, you'll want to go to Basecamp. All right, I'm sure a lot of folks here already know all of this. Now, if you're a member of multiple clubs, you'll see them listed here in the member section. Notice that I've highlighted in red, the member section. Just select the club that you're interested in, and voila, there you are. Basecamp, that's so easy to access, right? Notice though, it is a different website and it does not talk to toastmasters.org. We'll mention that a little bit more. Now, to access your curriculum, you can click on the big fat red arrow or the long skinny red arrow. I like to click on the long skinny one because that way I can access the path that I want to access in one click. It's much simpler that way. Otherwise, you have to go in, if you got more than one path in there, you have to select it again. So it's more than one click. So that'll take you into your path. Now, what I want to show you here, this is simple once you get used to it. You have to click once to activate, for example, the icebreaker, and click it again then to launch it. And that will take you to a window like this. Now, to navigate in this window, use the forward arrow to go further into your project, as well as the back arrow to go behind and back in your project. And of course, read all of the directions. It's important to do that. Also, I'd make sure not to skip any content, because sometimes there are some little quizzes that you have to take. And I'm getting ahead of myself here just a second. Further navigation, you can jump from one section to the other. You don't have to go all the way through. Again, you have to touch every piece of content in order to complete your project. But for example, if you want to access your evaluation resource, Again, I'm gonna back up here. You're gonna assess your skills before and after. You want to access your evaluation resource so you can take it to your meeting and hand it to your evaluator. You can just click on that, and that will take you to where you can access your evaluation resource for that particular project. As Paul mentioned, there's other ways to get those. Just click on that. That will bring up your evaluation. Now, once you've assessed your skills afterwards, after you've given your presentation, assessed your skills, then you'll want to click on the forward arrow and advance in your project. And guess what? You'll receive, hey, congratulations, good job. Yeah, you've completed your project. Yay. So you can just close that window, and that will take you back to your path, and you'll have a completion. What I want to show you here is if that just happened to be the last project in your path, you can click on the level completion. Click on that once to activate it, another time to launch it, and then make sure click on the submit button that will show up afterwards. Now let's talk briefly about a couple of other nice features that I've found in Basecamp. One of them is the repository that will display your badges that you've earned. Really? I earn badges? Yes, because when you activate a path, you get a badge. When you complete that path, you get another badge, and it's the same badge, but it's actually colored in instead of grayed out. You get a badge for every level completion that you've done, as well as special programs like Pathways Mentor Program. And then I believe there are other ways that badges can be dispersed to you, but we're not going to touch on that in this presentation today. Next, let's talk about my documents, or in this case, your documents, right? Oh, this is another repository, indeed, because once you have an evaluation, it's nice to be able to go back and review it. You can do that, and I like to keep them on my computer and a hard drive anyway, but you can also store them on Basecamp under My Documents for level, and there is another area for My Documents, which are documents that don't fit directly in a level. All right. Let's get into a little bit about Basecamp Manager. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because there are so many things that you can do in here. It might take a whole nother 20 minutes, and we don't have that amount of time tonight. First off, your Vice President of Education, President, and Secretary are your Basecamp managers. Do they look familiar? Yeah, maybe. Now, I do want to mention that Toastmasters International will send an email to the club contact email address that the club has determined. If someone submits a level completion request, it goes to the club contact email address. That may or may not be actually a Basecamp manager. That's changed over the years, but that's the way it currently is. Now, what I always do and what I highly recommend is when I complete a level, I'll send an email address to my Basecamp managers, the president, the secretary, and the vice president of education, letting them know I completed the level and please approve it and submit the award on Club Central. Okay. if you're a base camp manager now, how do you access that site? I'm going to be kind of boring because it's just like the other. You access it on toastmasters.org. You log in, you can hover over your name and go to My Home, scroll down, go to Basecamp. Now, here, you want to end up scrolling down again. You don't want the member area, you want the Basecamp area. And then click on the club that you can manage as a Basecamp manager. One of the key things that you can do, as I mentioned, there are many things that you can do, but one of the key things that a Basecamp manager can do is to approve level or path completion requests. So click on the tile for pending requests. It's that simple. Here you'll see a screen that shows your member name, and you'll have a couple of items off to the side, either approve or reject. I do know someone who has rejected because they knew the individual had not completed all of the speeches in the path. Like I say, there are many things that you can do. You can actually monitor progress. Maybe we can get into that in another meeting. But typically, you'll want to approve that request, and then you can log off and you're done, right? No, because you have to submit that award on Club Central so that that member and your club can receive the credit. So I just did a quick snippet there. Choose the club that you want to award that to and submit the education award. Now, a couple of resources. Paul had mentioned some, and I really enjoyed the way that he mentioned them. I have a couple others here as well. Paul mentioned the District 4 site. I just want to really quickly, this is a live thing, I hope it works. This is District 4 website, and the way that they do this is they define all of the 11 paths, all of the levels, and all of the projects in any one of the levels. You can click on them and it'll tell you all about that particular project. I think it's wonderful, and it's what I use to select the paths that I choose rather than take an assessment. But then again, that's just me. Remember, folks, disclaimer. Also, there are some short videos in many places, by the way, but one of those places is District 61. They have posted a bunch of resources out there. You can also view training materials like the Navigator and other tutorials that are out on Basecamp. I would highly recommend that you get and hook up with an experienced Toastmaster. Maybe it's an area director, a division director, or anyone on the Pathways team. You can contact me. This is my contact information. Now you have seen some of the Pathways Basecamp and Basecamp Manager fundamentals, and I hope that this presentation has been useful. Again, you can put your questions in the Q&A panel, and we'll answer what we can at the end. I want to thank you for your time, and let's see, is there another slide here? Ah, that's my presentation. Back to you, Celeste.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you so much. That was very interesting, and I think we are just continuing to learn this evening, which is wonderful. And now, let's welcome Marvel as she summarizes some of the main points of Paul's and Brian's speeches and offers some insights. Thank you, Marvel.
Thank you very much, Celeste. Welcome, fellow Toastmasters and our district leaders that are here in various different roles. The first thing that I would like to tell you is please look over in chat. And why should you look over in chat? I would like you to know that our District 6 Director has put in there reference material that you can go ahead and resource immediately right now and put it in your documents if you want and look at it later on for more resource. I would also like you to see that our Division Director F. Celeste has also put things in the chat. And I would like you please to take those resources that she has given to you and that she also sent forth for background material. Now, not only that, I am going to tell you a few other things. You have those resources in the chat. I want you to know that there are also several resources at our District 6 website that we have. You all know what that is, d6tm.org. And I want you to know that there are actually other resources than you've already seen from Basecamp, from Brian, on the Toastmasters.org website. Now, I want to tell you that all of us on this team will be available to you individually as a coach or a mentor. We also would like you to know that we are willing to come to your club if you want and do a presentation. If there are any other division directors that would like a presentation like this for their division, please contact the Pathways team. I will be putting my email address in the chat after that you may also contact myself, and we will do our best to individually and or at your club or division, even area level if your area director wants us to come to an area meeting. We will try our very best to accommodate you in our lives. With that, I would like to tell you this. A lot of people, when they take that survey, they don't make any comments. I want to highly recommend to you to put down a comment when you take that survey about that level that you just finished. Why? They listen to you at Toastmasters International. I'd like you to know that this program is going to be changing again. Please don't groan. Why? Do you get updates from Microsoft? Do you get updates on your smartphone, on your computer? You sure do. I see some smiles up there. They are just trying to help you get better. And that is what Toastmasters International is doing. It's trying to get better, and they're listening to the feedback from the individual members. We have a new update coming out with the Pathways program in 2024. It is called LMS. It's Learning Management Systems. What is the big, wonderful update? It is going to be mobile access. What is a fun thing for all of you that are Basecamp managers? You're only going to need to validate it at Basecamp. You don't have to do it any longer at Club Central. It will automatically be doing that going forward. Your exploration is going to be targeting on how to learn. They are going to zero in exclusively on leadership presenting online. It will be in not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but 6 languages going forward. Spanish, German, French, simplified Chinese, Arabic, and English. There will be 6 paths offered to start with only. Presentation mastery, dynamic leadership, engaging humor, motivational strategies, visionary communication, and persuasive influence. If you are working in a different path at this time, do not fret. You will be able to finish that. The last thing I want to leave you with is this. On our District 6 website and on our YouTube channel for District 6, there is a wonderful presentation by Jamie Richard. It is 6 different presentations on how to rock your path with lots of information and lots of ideas. And you can do it at midnight if you want to. You don't have to come to a specific meeting on a specific day. It's there for you all the time. And not only that, you can access this on www.d6tm.org. All you need to do is go to programs up at the top, click that arrow, go to pathways, resources, and guess what? There you will see Jamie in all her glory, again, trying to help you. And who is Jamie? She was a Pathways chair previously. I want you to know, please, the resources are here. We all want to help you. Please make contact with one of us on the Pathways team or Celeste, and we will do our very best to help you out by Zoom, phone call, email, or at a club meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marvel. Much appreciated. That was a very great summary and so many wonderful points that you brought out there. And at this time, we are going to go to Q&A. And Diane, you are our chat moderator. I know you've been monitoring the Q&A, and also I think there might be a question or two in the meeting chat. Diane, would you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Some of the questions in the chat had already been answered live in regards to the District 6 YouTube, and that was just answered by Marvell. But I also have another question that asks, do you know which LMS they are moving to? If you could not answer that answer, do you know what they're moving to? And if that's not known, maybe that's something we can get back to them later on.
The only thing I have so far is the learning management systems. That's all information I have. Maybe I see Dan. Dan Lazine, would you like to share with us?
Hi, Marvel. Good seeing you again.
It's good to see you too, sir.
LMS can refer to any application, and I'm very familiar with several of the. I've done a lot of online courses, and there's several pre-made applications that fit easily into online learning. And I just mentioned some of the LMS platforms are Thinkific, Teachable, Kajabi, Podia. And so some of those are really much easier to navigate, and I'm looking forward to hopefully something in that line being available with Toastmasters next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much. There was a question in the chat in regards to documents. They said, what is the best way to store evaluations? Screen and upload to my documents? I know it was mentioned in regards to the presentation. Any recommendations?
I will take that real quick. That's what I typically will do is I'll scan the documents in and create the PDF and then store up on the My Documents section. Sometimes you get photographs of the pages. That's acceptable to put up there as well. So it just depends on how you want to organize your My Documents section. I always convert the photographs to PDFs and put those up for easier access for me.
Great. There were just some comments in regards to agreeing what the presenters were sharing as we went along. And that is all that I see. Questions in the Q&A and in the chat. There is a lot of resources here in the chat. By all means, download it, and you want to keep that information. That's it, Celeste. There are no other questions at this time.
Thank you so much, Diane, and thank everybody for your questions. Does anybody have a question that they would like to pose verbally to the Pathways team? Please raise your Zoom hand. We will be also doing our best to share this information to you in an email, probably come out tomorrow with the various links. I'd suggest grab what you can, but also the contact information and other pieces of information that we think might be helpful to you. Any other questions or discussion?
We see Mary and Nicolina.
Okay, very good. Nicolina, go ahead.
Yeah, hello. I just wanted to ask Brian if he could remind us what was the address again for the District 61 for the people who are new to Pathway?
Sure, I will put that in the chat. Is that okay?
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you for that question and response. And there was another person who had a question. I'm not seeing who that might be.
It wasn't a question. It was just, this is Mary Swanson. I just wanted to thank you for conducting this session. This is well worth it, worth the attention. I intend, once the recording comes out, to share that with my club members. I'm trying to figure out different ways to get them more engaged with Pathways, and I think this would really help.
Good. That's great to hear. Pathways team certainly had some wonderful and helpful information they shared tonight. Any other questions, comments from the group? I should maximize my screen and maybe I'd see everybody. Paul, did you have a comment?
Just, yeah, a couple follow-up comments about what we discussed here. I remember hearing from Lance Miller, the 2005 world champion of public speaking, about how his answer about working through Pathways is also his answer for the meaning of life, which is you have to figure it out and you will figure it out. And it's a different answer for everybody. And more specifically, what I'd like to encourage everybody is, if you are concerned that the contents of the projects and the orders in which they are set in the different paths are constraining the kinds of speeches that you want to give and the kinds of speech topics that you want to cover, many of us are here to help you overcome those constraints. If there's something you're passionate about and you want something that for your audience to take away on that subject, please give that speech. And yes, we will find a way for that to be the kind of Pathways project credit that can help you progress through the program as you build your speaking and leadership skills.
I appreciate that comment. And I agree with it. Any other questions or comments? I think we are.
George Thompson has one. I see his
Awesome.
hand is like going like this.
George, please.
No, I just wanted to say thank you. I'm sorry, I'm a busy in person, but
Okay.
Great gesture, George.
Yes.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Brian?
Just real quickly, I wanted to reiterate you don't have to do these in order. Tonight, I started my new path in level 3. I skipped everything else, started in level 3. Just for information, it can be done. That's all. Thank you all for attending.
All right. Well, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Any more questions or answers? It's one of my main things I work on in Toastmasters is just trying to stay on time.